Good morning. If you can't tell from the fact that I look like him but with hair, I'm Bobby's daughter, Hanna Jane. I feel so grateful that in a cathedral full of people who adored my dad, I get to speak about his impact on my life. My dad served on the Boston Fire Department for 24 years. I'm 24 years old. So throughout my entire life, he has dedicated his life to helping others. He loved his city, he loved his community, and he loved his job. He used to say that the only thing he loved more than being a firefighter was being our dad. To know my dad was to love him. He was so in tune with the needs of the people around him, and he helped others more than he ever realized. I'm sure that every person in this room has their own story of a time when my dad showed up for them, and I'd love to hear them sometime. To put it simply, my dad was someone to everyone and everything to me. When I was little and saw anything that made me anxious, my dad would tell me to look for the helpers. In every situation, there are always people who are helping. This was a quote from Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Even as a child, I understood that my dad was one of the helpers. Whether he was showing up to rescue the people of Boston, to coach the youth of West Roxbury, or to support his own kids, he was the man you could look for in the crowd who would stop at nothing to help make you feel better. My dad represents everything our world can be if we look out for each other. If we reach out to help first and ask questions later. Every day, he embodied what it means to be a good neighbor, a caring friend, an empathetic stranger. Nobody was out of the bounds of his compassion. To say that I'm proud of my dad is an understatement, but I'll say it anyway. He worked so hard and still found time to enjoy the simple moments with our family. Movie nights, card games, long drives, they meant the world to him. I used to love to drive down to Florida with him because we could talk the whole way. We never ran out of things to say, and I always left our conversations feeling better than I had when they began. I wanted to close with one of my dad's favorite stories about me as a kid. When I was little, my family went to Edaville Railroad in Carver. My parents let me go on a ride by myself. It was an aerial carousel ride, sort of like Dumbo. From outside the gate, my mom and dad watched as all the carts went up into the air except for mine. I didn't know that if I pulled the handle in the cart, it would go into the air. From the side, my mom and dad yelled, "Hanna Jane, pull the handle, pull the handle." But I couldn't hear them because I was laughing hysterically, totally enjoying just going around the bottom of the ride, not realizing that I was missing out on even more fun. That story became such an important symbol through every phase of my life. Anytime I would reach an important milestone, took a risk, or prioritized my joy, my dad would say to my mom, "She's pulling the handle." For the rest of my life, whenever I find myself in need of some advice from my dad, I'll already know what he'd want me to do. He'd want me to pull the handle. I think if my dad could share a message with you all today, he would tell you to pull the handle. If there's something you've been wanting to do, somewhere you've been wanting to visit, someone you've been meaning to reach out to, make the time. Life is precious, and the cost of regret is too high. My dad made it his mission to never postpone joy. For that reason, I have thousands of memories to cherish for the rest of my life, and I couldn't be more grateful. My dad did it right. So be like my dad. Pull the handle.
Hey, sorry in advance. Mine's not as good as that. A lot of people in here. Thank you for everyone who showed up. I wanted to say friends, family, fire department, even the cops too. I'm Team Red, but like you guys anyway. And I think there's Marines over there too. There's a million things I could say about my dad, who he was. I bet most of you guys know that already. He lived his life entirely driven by his love to give back. Whether it was volunteering for an organization as large as the Gary Sinise Foundation, or as small as just seeing a look in somebody's eye that made him go up, give him a hug, a smile, or whatever they needed. He was that guy. He loved community, and from a young age taught me the importance of community and pride. I pride myself, and himself as well, as a Boston guy. We're both Boston guys forever. We both joke that him and I will always bleed green. Me and him shared a great connection over our love for the city of Boston, and even when I was stationed far away, our connection over the city grew. Usually, it was the sports teams we talked about daily, even though it was over 700 miles away. Even if it was just a quick phone call to talk about the most recent news in Boston sports, what we would do to fix the Red Sox, or, sorry, Jets, going down memory lane and reliving Malcolm Butler's interception. Riding the duck boats with the Pats, or talking about our yearly traditional trip to the Patriots Hall of Fame, and wondering where they're even going to put the next trophy. My dad loved building community, whether it was his many loyal friends or, as I always kind of joked and called them, BK's disciples in his huge community down in Old Key West, or the many young men he helped form a great foundation for in their life through coaching for the Parkway Pop Warner Falcons. I was always so proud to call him my dad. He was the one front and center when it came to helping someone. All I thought when I saw that was, yeah, that's my old man. But the greatest thing that I get to claim about my dad was that he was my best friend. We did everything together, and as much as he teased me about it, I was never embarrassed. Whether it was going to concerts, going out to eat, going to a game, or just stopping to do a bench check, to slow down and appreciate the moment. He was the man I could rely on when I got anxious or just couldn't get something out of my head. He was always a phone call away and always knew exactly what to say. He would write me letters in boot camp. I actually think he wrote me like 30. I still have all of them. So even when I wasn't a phone call away, he was finding ways to reach out. He always talked about how proud of me he was, but I want to express how proud of him I am. He always said he wanted me to be better than him. If I think I could be half as good as him, would be in good shape. I'm completely overwhelmed by the idea that I won't be able to make any more memories with him, but I'm comforted by the countless memories I have already made with him. My dad is my hero. He's the hero everyone says he is, and I'll miss him forever. And he taught us all how to live, and now he's taught us how to die. Thank you.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. The grace and peace of God our Father, who raised Jesus from the dead, be always with you. In the waters of baptism, Firefighter Robert Kilduff died with Christ and rose with him to new life. May he now share with him eternal glory.